Okay, I'll start with a quiz. In the summer of 1966, a young man by the name of Jim Ryan broke the world record in the mile at Edwards Stadium a few blocks from here. So, does anybody know what Jim Ryan's time was? Wait, who said 351? 351, 3. Thank you. I wanted to see if you'd get the 3. That's correct. 351.3. He broke the previous record by over 2 seconds. Mr. Conning definitely would have known that it was 351.3. And this was on dirt before there were super shoes and Epogen and so on. So anyway, I looked up a newspaper article about that race. There were 15,000 spectators there screaming and cheering and jumping up and down and whooping it up as Jim Ryan kicked towards the finish line. And one of those spectators was Mr. Conning. And he told me that it was one of the most exciting moments of his life. And he told me that during one of our many chats about running-related topics at in his Berkeley High classroom. I went there during many of my lunch breaks. We had the same lunch break at the same time. And rather than spend it with my peers, I often went in and just chatted with Mr. Conning about running because it was a topic we both loved to talk about. And he was the only person I knew who was as passionate about it as I was. So anyway, 20 years after Jim Ryan broke that record, Jim Ryan came to the Bay Area and spoke at a local high school. And Mr. Conning got wind of the event and invited me and several teammates to go hear Jim Ryan talk. And I don't remember exactly where it was. Were you there, Ben? No. I think it was near San Jose. Anyway, it was a long drive, and we went to the event. It was great. We had an amazing time. And then we stopped on the way back for some food and drove back. And it was like we were gone the whole day, basically. And it's like, wow, he could have spent that day, at home relaxing, but instead he took 4 kids to this event. But that's the sort of thing Mr. Conning did all the time. Later that year, he invited me to attend the Kinney High School Cross-Country National Championships in San Diego. I was much too slow to qualify for that race as a competitor, but the next best thing was to go watch it. And so we went down there, and it was really thrilling to see the nation's best in the flesh. And I took it for granted at the time, but isn't that amazing that this man took me, an annoying high school kid, on a trip to San Diego? I mean, he was so nice to me, and I did nothing to deserve his kindness. But I remember something he said to me on that trip. He had recently attended a memorial service, and he was reflecting on what his own memorial service might look like someday. And he said to me that no one would come except his family. He said that. And yeah, wrong. And, he just, in his characteristically humble way, he had no idea how many lives he had touched.
Wow, Jesse, those are great stories and comments and feelings. I had to kind of take some notes for myself here because I noticed that Andrew neglected my request to put a Kleenex box up here. I recognize a lot of faces here, and there's many more that I yet haven't had the pleasure to meet. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Ben, and I was one of Keith's athletes at Berkeley High. There's been a number of examples today talked about his life of service to others. And as a coach, he created tremendous opportunities for us. Cross country and track is kind of like a friend-making machine. And he gave us the opportunity to make friends, learn life lessons about perseverance, dealing with adversity and disappointment, and doing difficult things in pursuit of a goal. And our sport is arguably one of the most diverse sports experiences with girls and boys from all walks of life, participating in a variety of different events and a wide array of athleticism. And I think that really aligned with what I heard today about his work in West Berkeley, which I did not know about. He also gave us a lot of exposure through travel, like Jesse said, seeing other schools and communities around the Bay Area and the state. Keith took us everywhere from Santa Rosa to Half Moon Bay, Fresno, Los Angeles, and he spent his personal time, his weekends, taking us all over the place. Hours and hours in Berkeley Unified School buses, or the VW bus. And raise your hand if you also remember the red Nissan Sentra. A lot of road trips in that car. One of those road trips, we stopped at Anderson's Split Pea Soup on I-5, and it was all you can eat that night. And so we had an eating contest, just one-on-one, me and Keith. He let me win. Really wasn't a great idea right before a race. Another one of the opportunities of a coach is you can model behavior and character. And Keith showed us what consistency looked like. I don't think he ever missed a 6 a.m. practice or a meet himself. Yeah. We could always count on him being there. He took care of our transportation, all the entries, getting us in the right events, the right heats, helping us know where to be, when we needed to be there, and giving us our own individual splits to understand our results. He might have a couple dozen athletes competing at the same time, but somehow he would get all of our splits, get them exactly right, and never miss. And that's really hard to do. And if he were here now, he could probably still tell us all what those splits were, right? And that directly translated to his announcing. He could add color and explanation to the drama you were seeing unfold around you, and he would know, this person that ran this time in this race, and they were born 1/12/1970, Oakland, California, 10 pounds, 8 ounces, 4:23 p.m. Talk about encyclopedic knowledge. He was next level. And personally, having Keith announce a number of races I ran in during and after high school added a calming personal connection to a moment of competitive pressure. And I could seek him out after those races and talk to him. Whew, where's that Kleenex, man? Both coaching and announcing, he created meaningful experiences that wouldn't have happened without him. Yeah, thanks. So today is a very special day. It's a fun day. It's a gift from Keith to bring us all together. Okay, try and regroup here, and I'm going to read a poem. So now that we know that Keith got to work with Brutus Hamilton, I feel like it's really fun to read this Brutus Hamilton poem that I think Keith would have loved, and he probably knew it. It's one of the strange ironies of this strange life that those who work the hardest, subject themselves to the strictest discipline, who give up certain pleasurable things in order to achieve a goal, are the happiest. When you see people line up for a distance race, don't pity them, don't feel sorry for them, envy them instead. Thank you.
I don't have anything written down. It's all in here. I'm so old, I was a teammate with Keith in high school. So we go back. He graduated in 59, I graduated in 61. And I didn't realize he was so damn smart. My dad said I was a running idiot, and he was right. So everybody else went off to college. I went for a year, and I joined the Navy when I was 17. So I thought, shit, just take me. So I didn't know that Keith was so smart. He went all these great places, you know. And so I ended up, after the Navy, coming back to college, San Francisco State. So anyway, so here I am at San Francisco State. I set a school record in the steeplechase. And that was in 1967. And then I moved to Southern California. I forgot about that stuff. But guess who found me? Keith found me. How the hell did he find me? What are you talking? What? What's going on? He goes, well, somebody broke your record. Well, thanks. 10 years later, he finds me and tells me that. Okay, well, after college, I became a coach, track and cross country. Funny thing, huh? So I'm coaching it, and I coached, you know, in 1961, we ran track and cross country, Keith, whatever. Well, they stopped the state meet in 1961 for cross country. We had nothing. So here it is, 1982. I'm coaching a kid that is so good. If you guys know anything about track, he ran an 8:42 mile. He was a state champion and a national champion. His name was Eric Reynolds, if you remember that name. But anyway, it was 83. So we show up in 82, and they were trying to get this thing back online again, the state meet, at Woodward Park. So guess what? I bring not just him, but my team up there. Who greets me? Keith. Yeah, what the hell? This is great. You know, seeing him, you know, and we just go right back to where we were and all that kind of stuff. And in 83, Eric won the state at Woodward Park and the state champion back in Florida. And then you fast forward another 15, 20 years, and Eric's son is running. And his team gets to go to Woodward Park. And that was, I don't know, how many years ago? He's now a teacher, so it must have been 8 to 10 years ago. So who do we see? We see Keith. He's still there. He's still doing all this stuff. He's still volunteering. We connect again. It's fantastic. I go, what the heck? I mean, he's been doing things for so many years, for so many people. Back when we started in 83, there was just all the schools, all the 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, everybody ran together. I hate to brag, but our team won. But anyway, so when we go back there with his son, I go, what the heck happened? I mean, they got all these people selling shoes and food and all these different things. I go, what the heck? It's been, 20-some odd years or whatever, but it was amazing. And here's Keith up there on the table talking about all the guys that are running, all that kind of stuff. So it was really neat to go back and see him and be in touch with him, you know. And another guy that Mike Jabot, you probably saw that name, whatever. Well, Mike had a stroke and stuff, and Keith again found out about it because he was on our team in high school also. And we caught up with that and talking about Mike and stuff. And I even got the letter that he sent, you know. So I got all his information. This was like 10 years ago, and I still got the letter. There's his little picture right there that he always sends all the stuff. He reaches out to people. But you know what? It's something that you maintain a friendship with somebody all these years, since 1959. It's amazing. Don't ever lose touch with your friends, your coaches, your teammates. You know, it's like I tell all these guys that when I coached these kids, they're now retiring. And then when they were in high school, I told them, I said, look, you guys are such good guys and you're such good friends. I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna throw a Christmas party for you. I did it for 45 years straight. I stopped for 2 years for the pandemic, and we started again the last couple of years. But don't lose touch with these guys, these kids. They're fantastic. And Keith was the guy that made it all happen for me. See you guys.
Well, I apologize. I don't have any preparation, but it's very emotional. All right, this is tough. I mean, Mr. Cunning for me, it was everything because I barely spoke English. And he was my translator, my coach, mentor. And we went to Arcadia Invitation, state championship is usually me and Mr. Cunning. All those are fun, memorable. I mean, he taught me about American culture, beside running. And I think the message was he was a giver. He gave his time. He gave his knowledge. He was very nice, and he also just like he was a happy guy because you just say simple thing, he always laugh, and then that's a sign of 100% satisfaction. And I think his legacy, this is his product. I am his product, and I miss him. And thank you for your service.
I don't use a mic normally. My name's Chris. I'll get you. I'm also a Gator with a yellow jacket. I want to say, as a teammate and runner of Mr. Connie, Coach Connie, thank you to his family, because I know these things get emotional. For all the time he spent with us and not with you, I know he made you run. In the late 70s or 80s, my dad wrote a book called The Jogger's Catalog. I come from a family of runners, all 12 of us, and I'm number 12. And in the picture of the Jogger's Catalog, there's a bunch of pictures, but one of the pictures, my whole family is into their running gear except for me and my sister, Claire, if you guys remember Claire. She's now the coach at Oakland High School. She tried to get me to coach cross country there, but this community of runners, first I want to just make sure this point gets through to the grandchildren. So beautiful of you, your words, and the rest of the family. I know the sacrifices that our families that do service take away from their families. So know that when he said that bit about the family, Jesse, only my family will be there. We're here. We're part of that family. And that testament, when I think of, as I get older, you know, trying to work the pay-by-phone app in the parking garage and everything. And I teach digital literacy for a living. My eyes, I can't see. The way I remember things, this acronym is abbreviation. So Mr. Connie's, DJ, dedicated, joy. He had such joy for this. Track and field, to those that know, you know. When I got Jim Ryan's signature on a book, that was everything to me, Jesse, that night. He signed it. Who is he? But he broke 4 minutes, right? Acceptance. I accept now that I'm just of an age that I'm not running. And no ego. I remember coming 2012 to the Meet of Champions because I love track and field. I just love it. Where else can someone that can hardly run to the fridge, right? Or someone that can't lift 20 pounds could be on the same team and score points. You guys remember Team Banana? We didn't have a baton, but he was like, you can score points if you do this relay. And we go, we got a banana. Almost brought a banana, but you were on that team. We did Team Banana, so, you know, anyway. But I went to this 2012 Meet of Champions, and I go up to, you know, where's the announcer? I'm like, Coach, and he goes, that's him. That's the guy I was telling you about. Which could have been many stories. And I'm honest because I was kind of fast. But, you know, and I was telling you earlier, one of my greatest memories when he'd tell us to run from Berkeley High to the end of the pier by Skates on the Bay. And we get down there, and at the end of the pier, Mr. Connie, with his stopwatch and his smile. 3:22, well, 13:22, 13:22. right back up. So, and thank you, Ben Turman and Jesse Malkin, for getting us all together, because you tend to bring us all together, and this is something that Keith, or Coach Connie, I got to get out of Keith because we didn't call him Keith, we call him Coach. He would want, and we honor his legacy. And if we want to continue to see our kids get off of this, go to a track or cross country meet and see him proud.
So I'm a Yellow Jacket class of 78 and King Junior High class of 75, I guess it would have been. And actually I taught at Berkeley High from 93 to 04, somewhere around there. So I saw Keith both as a colleague and as a coach and teacher, and I honestly can't remember how much, I don't remember him that much, but what I wanted to point out to people here, something he took on and his generation took on that we forget. In 1968, Berkeley Unified School District, in their wisdom, decided to integrate the schools of Berkeley. I started here, I was in third grade when that happened. And suddenly, instead of walking to school, I'm taking the bus to school. And none of the teachers knew how to teach in integrated classes. Nobody knew how to tell them how to teach. So Keith and his generation, that was imposed on them, a good thing. But they took it on and they ran with it. And you see who's here and you see who's Keith's worked with. But I just want us all to remember, that was something that was imposed on him for good reasons. But he took that on and ran with the challenge, and clearly we see who he connected with. And I saw Jack Ball and Paul Williams here, other teachers from back in the day, and I just want us to remember how much he did for helping make us kids of that era, the first generation going through getting integrated, making it through. Dennis was back there. And so I just wanted to say thank you to Keith for all of his work, and that we all should remember that he did that. Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Justin Avery. I'm class of '89. I was coach for me while we ran in cross country. I was a track runner, but I would run in the off season with coach. And honestly, I just felt the need to say, as I was listening to everyone reading about what Coach did in his life, like outside of anything that I would have seen as a student, it just made me think. I'm like, wow, like I can't think of them off the top of my head, but some of the things that were said about him, like his opinion of the war and the choices that he made as a result of his own convictions and his own moral code. When I was a student running under Coach, I didn't know that. And I'm just astounded because behind Coach was an amazing human being who was doing what he does in the world. And I didn't see that. And I wouldn't have seen it. Why would I have? I was there to run, and so I didn't really talk about Coach's personal life. But I just wanted to point out that, wow, this is an incredible man who walked the earth here, and it's almost a shame that only in your age do you learn these things, But I just wanted to point it out. That was a wonderful thing to learn. But yeah.
Hi, my name is Dennis Brown, and he was a friend, he was a scout leader, and he was a cheerleader. I got to meet Keith my senior year of high school. I was the first class to do consumer economics. Mind you, it was my senior year, and I said that year, I'm not going through special ed. I'm going to do it, graduate. And Keith was a cheerleader for me. By the following semester, he taught the class again. So I sat in the class. He bought the owner of McDonald's. So I sat in the class. I swear, I asked every question about Mr. McDonald's, about the food industry. He said, you go to McDonald's a lot. No, I'm curious about the food industry. And baby, before you know it, I graduated and got into food. So I studied culinary arts at Laney College. Mind you, I didn't graduate. I got a career. It became Fat Albert's. And I lasted the restaurant 20 years. And every time I struggled with my classes, instead of running to my family, I ran to Keith. And Keith made time to say, slow down, Dennis. I'm not going anywhere. And here he is. So I want to thank you for you guys being here. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Karriem. I come from a Muslim family background. My father set up 3 mosques in Sacramento. And so when the Nation of Islam disassembled, we were taught at home. And so at one point, my mother and father said, we're going to move to Berkeley. And that was our first experience of Berkeley High, and there are 5 of us. A lot of people teased us because we were different. We were all Muslims, and in the Muslim environment that we came from, everyone was your family, so we all had protection. No one was out to tear a student down or make a person feel bad. When I got to Berkeley High, the conflicts of different personalities didn't have that same structure. So depending upon who you related to, they treated you differently. As a young person running, I was naturally fast. But Mr. Conning was the first person I met and said, well, you're on the team. I said, okay. When I was told that we got to run at 6 a.m. to El Cerrito High School and back, so what now? Where? Before school? That's different. Mr. Conning treated us as people. He introduced us to how to relate to adults and not as a super authority figure over other people, just as a person. For me, my interaction with him was, yes, sir, he would make sure we checked in because I was always in the last when it comes to long distance running, but he told me, keep at it. You'll get better over time. It's a progressive race. So the premise of keep going, just be nice, treat the people with respect. Him, Mr. Ward, Coach White, the values that they instilled on us, the being taught what you can do, the faith in imparting on people is something that parents can transform on, and your dad did a great job for all of us. Thank you.
I want to start off with this. All you runners look like you could go out and run again, and I don't appreciate that. I'm kind of resentful. So I grew up across the street from the Connings. My folks moved there in '72. You guys have been there a year or so, something like that. And let me just set the stage, because Berkeley was kind of rough down there at the time. We literally lived on the other side of the tracks. The tracks were a block and a half up from us. And that's when Berkeley had a law that couldn't have a liquor store within 1 mile of the campus. We were just over 1 mile from the campus. So we had like 5 liquor stores within a few blocks, a couple massage parlors, a lot of crime. A lot of people don't realize in the 70s, Berkeley had more crime than just about any other city in the state on a daily basis. We moved in, and the Connings were across the street. Jimmy became my first really good friend. And what Nancy McKay was talking about, the sense of community, that started building with the Connings and some other folks on our block. There was a lot of nonsense happening around, but not a lot on our block. Those block parties brought everybody on the block together. Maybe there were a couple people who didn't want to participate, but there were all kinds of folks who were the first generation, second generation in this neighborhood. The neighborhood is built in the late 20s, early 30s, and by the time we got there, that first generation was passing on, moving away. So we were the first people to get into this new generation, into this kind of gritty Berkeley. And there wasn't a whole lot of sense of community at first, but through the block parties and the going door to door and meeting people, by the time I left for high school for college in 1985, I knew everybody on that block. First name, last name, how long they lived there, and I couldn't remember phone numbers, but I had it on a list somewhere. That was huge in building the community. Nancy also talked about them going out on citizen patrol. And there's one story that popped into my mind as we were driving down. At the corner of Curtis and University, where the Foster's Freeze still is, it's like the last thing in Berkeley that is the same. In the evening, sex workers would be on the corners plying their trade. And Keith and the group decided this was not a great environment for the kids to be in. We all crossed the street right there to go to Franklin for our elementary, or 4 through 6. Not a great environment. So what they went down is just go and stand on the corner, maybe 4 or 5 of them, and just stand there. Wouldn't confront anybody, wouldn't say anything, just stand there until those folks decided maybe they could do their business elsewhere. and the neighborhood took a notch up. That was the kind of thing that he would do, and we wouldn't even know about or think about. I learned that later. When you're 10, you can't put that kind of thing in context. But as I learned about it, I began to appreciate him more and more. I want to say, I'm old school. I brought a couple written notes. And I'm also a Boy Scout, so I still have Kleenex here. Let's see. Ultimately, I became a Boy Scout because of Keith. Keith got 6 of us, by my count, on the block involved, in addition to Jimmy. Not everybody made it through, but everybody benefited. Everybody's life turned better from getting that cohesive thing. I know mine did, because I had no sense of being part of a team, no sense of working with other people. And in the Scouts, you had to. And so we all became a team, and we all worked together. And that is a lesson that I live with today. It's a huge lesson. And finally, I just want to say that I've known what kind of influence he had on me, but I didn't know it. And if you have someone like that in your life, let them know it now.
Hi, my name is Phil Wilder, and not a yellow and red Berkeley, and so I coached at Merle High School starting in 1981. Keith wrote so much, he spoke so much, but to put the man into words is most difficult, right? And he goes beyond, and I learned a lot about him today. But when I first started off coaching, before there was Google and instant, messaging, I'd call Keith on a Sunday, because he would have gone down to the smoke shop where they had newspapers, and he would get newspapers from outside the area, and he would share the results. He was the ranker. I always thought his name should have been Archive versus Keith Conning, because if you wanted to know something, you could get it from him. But what was even more important, I learned from someone once that competition is from the Latin. It doesn't mean against, it means with. And Keith Conning was the greatest living example of that, because where some people might have hoarded those things, he shared them freely. I had the opportunity to travel with him at the International Sports Exchange to London and Paris. We shared a room. We saw Steve Ovett and Sebastian Coe. It was just lifetime memories. And then from there, he continued to coach, and I coached as well, and we put on an invitational. And then he was the announcer for that. If he had $1 for every name he called, watch out Elon Musk, because you don't have it. He brought so much to it. And it wasn't just the first person, but it was the last person. It didn't really matter much to him. So he did so much, and he was definitely a man on a mission. The jobs he did, he created, and there was something called California Track and Running News before you would have online results. People would read it religiously. And Keith had a column, and really speaks, it was called the Conning Tower. And so I think he will always continue to speak to us. He will always be in the tower. And when I go to Edwards Stadium, I can't help but hear, that voice resonating. I was talking to one of my athletes about coming today. He goes, I'm not sure if I know who he was. I said, you may not know who he is by looking at him, but when you hear that voice, it hits you right here. So, I'm sure he'd be announcing today and say, okay, Phil, that's enough, next one up. So, and it's great to hear from everyone, because how connected we are. And I think that's the other part, is Keith always listened and realized that we have so much in common if we just can share those, degrees of separation. So thank you very much to the family for putting this on. Thank you.
Whoever was thinking of coming up next, come on up next. I just want to tell the runners out there, Coach Wilder, so he's the guy behind the Mariner Invitational. And so he's responsible for those hay bales that we had to run over. So.
Why? We're already up on the hill. I ran around.
Well, I'll jump in here. I'm Jeff Zimmerman, and I was one of Keith's athletes at Berkeley High School. I graduated in 1975, but I met him when I was a sophomore entering school and was on the cross-country team that was coached by Coach Willie White, who many of you know. And Keith Conning was assistant coach, which meant he wasn't paid. And I later learned that he finally got paid when I was a senior. That was 1975, and he was pretty ecstatic about that. I think the school district probably gave him $200 or $300 or something, you know. That was anyway. I do remember meeting Keith Conning when I jumped into cross country team. I was recruited based on PE teacher saw me running and said, "Hey, you got to try out and go see Willie White and sign up and everything." And I did that, and got in some races, and I was, beat pretty soundly, on that. But I still remember the junior varsity championships at the end. And this is junior varsity, mind you. All the good runners were in varsity, of course. And I did really well. I came in first. And Keith Conning comes up to me, and I hadn't met him before, and he just starts laughing at me, and he says, he looks at my shoes, and I've got these rubber-soled PF Flyers or Converse or something like that, and he goes, "You need to go tell your mother to buy you some new shoes." And so I did that. I got some new shoes, and my career in running took off from there, and I still run, but I remember that. But anyway, I was one of the, I remember going with Keith, I got involved in his statistics, got caught up in that. I remember I helped him out computerizing some of his stuff. He was keeping it all on paper. And the school district at that time had access to the predecessor to the internet, which was the network system at UC Berkeley, or Berkeley. That was, this is way, way back. And we could get access to it through the Berkeley school system. And so I wrote him a little program. I was in the programming class, and we came up with this way to statistically do it, or add these things in and compile these numbers. I remember coming over to the Conning household there. And I remember you, Sarah, you were a young girl. You probably don't remember me at all, but I was one of the high school students. So we would type this thing in and compile it, and then he would sell it, or he did something, he distributed it to the other coaches and stuff, and that was the beginning of his statistical stuff. He kept it by hand, I think, before that. And it was an amazing kind of a thing. But I remember going to the smoke shops, and we'd drive by. I mean, I was in high school. We'd stop in there with his bus, and you're out on Broadway at 12th Street, and he'd run in there, and you just go like, "What are you doing?" And he'd drive down to San Jose, get the newspaper down there. Yeah, and he had Delauer's, right across from the Pussycat Theater on Broadway. I remember that as a high schooler. I was just like, "Whoa, we got to go there," So anyway, he would run around on. I still remember he'd go out early mornings, Sunday mornings, and grab all the newspapers, and then he'd type them all in. He had to get it out on Monday to all the coaches and everything, and kept them all compiled on that. So later on, I kind of lost touch with him, and then I came to, like a lot of people, I came to Edwards Stadium for the North Coast section meet, and I was sitting there just as a spectator and listening to it, and I realized that was Keith Conning's voice. And I went up to the announcer's booth afterwards and said, "Hey, Mr. Conning, you remember me?" And he goes, "Oh, of course, he knew." And he said, "Why don't you come on and help out?" And so I joined in to help out. So I did that for 10 years after that. I came every time. It was really fun. And it was really rewarding because I'd be up in the booth and, helping him out, and he was doing all the announcing. And all the coaches would come up, and athletes, and they'd ask him, to announce, like there'd be a runner that would be coming up in the next race, and coach would say, "Hey, can you say something special about this guy, his dad?" And Keith would remember this stuff remarkably. I was so jealous of his memory. And he would announce, and he'd say, "Yeah, this guy's coming up on the 400-meter run, and his dad, was in the Olympic trials back in 1942," and something like this. He'd have some incredible story that would be in there, and people really loved it. It just made the meet so much different and so much better. So that was really interesting working with. But the coaches and the other people that would come up to the booth, Keith would introduce me and say, they'd be talking to him, and he'd say, "Oh, this is Jeff Zimmerman," and and these guys all thought like I was somebody important, like I was like a coach or a standout. You go, Jeff went to Cal too. Like I remember I ran one race, and that was it. I was never again. So I was a average runner, but it made it sound like I was some, like heading to the Olympic trials. I always thought that was really fun hanging around with Keith because you felt really important just being in his presence, and that was part of his whole way that he handled people on that. One last story is just a little bit. This is important to me because I remember one time we were up in the booth, and in that booth you can see it's just a wonderful view of the campus of Berkeley, the Campaniles out there. It was a sunny day, I remember one time, and you look back over and there's a view of the Bay Bridge, or the Golden Gate Bridge, and just a wonder. And I remember mentioning to Keith, and I said, I feel like I'm in a center. This is like Edwards Stadium is the center of the universe. And Keith turned it around a little bit, and he said, well, this is like this is like my church, and this is my congregation. And he said, and I said, so you're leading the congregation? He says, yeah. He said, I'm like the minister. And I remember thinking about it, and I was like, he's exactly right, because he's running the meet, and he's orchestrating when the races come up and the timing of the races. He's orchestrating the whole thing, just like he's running a congregation. And I think about that now. With that, I thought, well, that would make Edwards Stadium a very religious site. So I always thought that God must live there. And I'd always go back and think that that's the center of the universe, and if God does live there, then Keith Conning is also sharing that space now, I think. But and that's how I think of it. He's always going to be present in those places that you know. And for me, it's Edwards Stadium. For you all, it's probably some other place, but he'll always be with you. So thank you very much, and thank you to the family.
Anyway, Sarah, James, Andy, I'll never forget your dad. When I joined the troop, there was a kid. I grew up across the street from these guys, from the three. There was a kid, me. Didn't have a backpack, didn't have nothing. Your dad gave me the old wooden backpack at Point Reyes. A lot of kids said that were in the troop at that time, our age, you ain't gonna make it. Well, beg to differ. I'm here. Love you guys. Love your dad. Thank you very much. And if it wasn't for you guys and your dad, who knows? I probably wouldn't be here. Thank you.
We have leftovers. There's plenty of food. I put some Ziploc bags out here. Don't be bashful. Take some for the road. And we're going to the Boy Scout Troop 5 is going to sing a song. By the blazing council fires